All right, this is a very, very important video. Please resist the urge to click off. This is for people who love the police, for people who don't love the police, they actually hate the police, and for that spectrum in between. I love the police and I back the blues sometimes, but only when they're doing good, when they're acting like the good guys. We all know that Americans want to be free, but what do we want to be free from? What does a lack of freedom look like? We all know that police and military take this solemn oath to protect and defend the Constitution, which is synonymous with our freedoms, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But what is domestic terrorism, or what does a domestic enemy look like? I think we all know what a foreign enemy looks like. They come from without and they jeopardize American freedoms. But what does a domestic enemy look like? What if China and Russia set up military bases in the north and in the south, and then as they were setting up those military bases, they were sprinkling little Chinese and Russian stations in America? And what if from those Chinese stations they had all these enforcers, and the enforcers went around harassing Americans on the public roadways, like, pulling them over for petty reasons and issuing exorbitant fines that people really can't afford, and they don't want to be hassled anyway. They just want to be free. They weren't on the roadways harming, threatening to harm, or damaging people's property. They were just maybe going 7 miles over the speed limit. Maybe they didn't turn their blinker on when they should have. Maybe they did turn their blinker on. Maybe they were driving too slow, and the Chinese troops were like, you know what? That guy looks awfully suspicious driving slow like that. So they pull you over when you're driving slow. They pull you over when you're driving too fast. They pull you over when you turn your blinker on too soon or too late, or maybe your license plate tag was not illuminated. Wouldn't we call that domestic terrorism? Wouldn't we call that at least domestic harassment? And yet, the video that I did right before the last video, where I highlighted Chuck Bronson's video where he showed with body cam footage, dash cam footage, front and rear facing dash cam, and police scanner audio, he proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Lafayette, Indiana police were colluding against him, an American who not only was doing nothing wrong, but in the words of the Lafayette Police Department, Chuck Bronson and his buddy were driving like angels.
Yeah, I don't know if 457 had any traffic violations all the way through.
Negative, they're driving like angels.
And yet, they still pulled them over. They didn't just pull them over, they treated it as a high-risk traffic stop where they were coming at them with their guns drawn.
Hey, show us your hands. Show us your hands right now, passenger. Show me your hands!
Hands!
Show me your hands! Show us your hands!
Passenger's not complying. Both hands, passenger, both hands!
If you guys do not comply, we will send the canine.
Driver, turn your left! Driver, turn your left now!
Sir, if you guys don't comply, we'll send the canine. We don't want to have to do that.
Every single cop that was on that traffic stop colluded against Chuck Bronson. He's got audio evidence from the police scanner video that they were conspiring against his freedom. They were conspiring against his right. People who took an oath to not only not conspire, but to protect and defend Chuck Bronson's right to be free on American soil. It's called conspiracy against rights, 18 U.S.C. 241. And it goes along with 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. They weren't even using law. They were using traffic law, but what is traffic law? We constantly say that in this channel. Traffic law is a justification to violate individual rights. In other words, traffic law trumps the Constitution that all these cops swore to protect and defend. But even beyond that, those cops know that Chuck Bronson wasn't doing anything wrong, i.e. driving like an angel, and yet they pulled him over and jeopardized his life by drawing their firearms on this guy. I can't believe that Chuck Bronson's video doesn't have 30 freaking million views. And the reason I'm picking 30 million views is because that's 10% of the US population. Supposedly there's 326 million people. Let's say just half of those are adults. So you get 150 to 170 million people. At least 10% of that should see Chuck Bronson's video. At least 17 million people, I would double that. 34 million people need to see Chuck Bronson's video, because it's not an isolated case. And that's what should concern us. We have a clear case with evidence, all the evidence you need in the world to show that domestic terrorism was afoot, at least in Lafayette, Indiana. And then it makes you question, let's see, if they're colluding against Americans, if they're conspiring against Americans' rights in Lafayette, Indiana, I bet they're doing it in other places. And then we've got the video before that, where a federal judge had to tell the Kansas state troopers to step down from the Kansas two-step. And what's the Kansas two-step? They'll pull you over for some benign, stupid traffic reason. Or you were going 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. You weren't jeopardizing lives. You were probably going with the flow of traffic like everybody else was. And you're not a criminal, and you shouldn't be fined on American soil. That's called economic terrorism. But what they'll do is they'll pull you over for the original traffic stop, issue you the ticket or whatever business they have with you, take 2 steps back to their cruiser and go, turn around and go, oh, by the way, kind of like Columbo, I got another question for you. And then they reinitiate the traffic stop. And then because Americans are ignorant about the rights that they have, and they don't exercise their rights, and now they're atrophied in their minds and they've lost their rights, they engage with the officer again. He conducts his fishing expedition, and then rights are violated. They bring out the drug dog, they do a false hit, they interrupt your day, and they harass you while you're sitting there watching the dog scratch the side of your car, and then trying to fabricate something so that they can fill you into the prison industrial complex. Because that's what it's all about. This is a money-making racket. This is a money-making scheme. This is nothing short of domestic terrorism. So the federal judge actually says in her own words that with this Kansas two-step, these Kansas troopers are, quote, waging war against motorists. And that is absolutely 100% right. Is she a black robe tyrant in that federal court? Of course she is. But she did speak the truth right there. The Kansas troopers are initiating and instigating a war against motorists in Kansas. And then it makes you think, okay, so if they're conspiring against people like Chuck Bronson in Lafayette, Indiana, and if they're doing the Kansas two-step and waging war against motorists in Kansas, this is probably an epidemic. This is probably a systemic problem where cops are actually acting in the capacity of domestic terrorists. And what do we do as Americans? Are we going to fight against it, or are we just going to go, oh yeah, look at all this evidence stacked against them and do nothing about it?
Driver, roll down your window and put both hands outside the car now. Both hands outside the car.
Service, how many people did you see?
Just 2. Put down your phone, keep both hands out, both visible.
We need to take a serious look at eradicating these frickin' traffic laws. We need to, if we're going to make the Constitution the supreme law of the land, which it isn't, traffic law is the supreme law of the land. Do you think you have rights when a cop pulls you over? When you see the cherries and berries light you up behind you, do you think when you pull over you have rights? You do not have the right to leave. You do not have the right to stand on your rights, because when you do, it pisses the cop off, and they're like, oh, okay, you're going to treat me like that? Well, I was only going to give you 1 ticket. Now I'm going to give you a ticket for this and this and this. And they sit there and abuse their authority. Why? Because you chose to not submit to their terrorism. You chose not to be crushed under the boot of their frickin' tyranny. And they get pissed off about it. So what are we going to do? I mean, are cops domestic terrorists, or are they not? Am I saying that cops don't do good things sometimes? You can see that cops do good things sometimes. But the SS soldiers back in the 1930s Germany, they also did good things. I'm sure they pet puppy dogs, and they saved cats from trees, and they did good things to little kids every once in a while. But overall, what was their job? Their job was to take away the rights of the German people. And that's exactly what's happening in America. So let me ask you, would domestic terrorism be acceptable if the Chinese and Russian troops were interfering with us and harassing us and issuing us crazy fines and hauling us off to a rape cage? Would it be okay if they did it? Because if it's not okay for them to do it, then why would those same actions with an American police uniform, why would that be acceptable to anybody? Now, I understand why people hate police. And on the other side, I can understand why these people, claim to love police. It's because we've been immersed in this 15,000 hour indoctrination program called the public school system, which is really the public fool system that says, hey, see the authority? He's good. He's somebody that you need to obey. You need to comply. If they give you an order, just stop, drop, and roll, man. Do what they tell you to do. Don't question authority.
I'm a cop, and you will respect my authority.
I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned, or authorities that can't be questioned. Guys, you are perfectly within your right to stand for your rights. The question is, where do we go from here? What do we do about these traffic laws that do, practically speaking, trump individual rights, which means they trump the Constitution, which these law enforcers swore to protect, defend, and uphold? I'm seriously looking for answers here. We need solutions, because I'm telling you, just like we saw after Katrina, all those cops in Louisiana going door to door, confiscating people's weapons and arresting people who just wanted to stay in their house and protect their property. That same thing's going to happen when the NWO, the New World Order, starts issuing all these globalist commands.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
You say guns will be taken?
Yeah, no one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
If those cops don't care about your right to the extent where they're going to issue you fines and ticket you with traffic laws, do you really think they're going to protect your rights when the globalists start running amok and start really ramping up the Agenda 2030 thing? No way, they're not on your side. And so this is just as much a video for people who hate police, for people who love police, for everybody in between, and for police themselves. Guys, what are you thinking? And then another thing, to add insult to injury, not only do we see this playing out, but we don't see one officer in any of these videos stepping forward going, what? You guys admitted that this guy's driving like an angel. You're going to pull him over for a freaking petty traffic infraction of he didn't turn his signal on 200 feet before the turn, which Chuck Bronson also proved he did it at least 230 to 250 feet before. They had nothing to go on. No reason to pull him over, and absolutely no reason to jeopardize his life. If you guys haven't seen that video, I'm going to leave Chuck Bronson's video link in the description, and I'll also leave the link to the video that I did about the Kansas two-step, and just check it out, because these aren't isolated cases. This isn't just happening in Indiana and Kansas. This is happening in Tennessee. It's happening in Wisconsin. It's happening in Maine. It's happening in California. It's happening in Florida, and it's happening in all police departments in every state every single day of the week. And they're making ka-ching, ka-ching. They're making tons of money. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If the problem with this world is that we have evil people, then the last thing you want to do is give some of those evil people unlimited, unbridled power and unlimited resources to bring you down and take away your rights. I seriously want answers to the questions I posed. Leave them in the comment section. Not only can we get a good conversation going, it really helps overcome the censorship algorithms. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a hard-hitting conversation starting design you can put on a shirt, hoodie, mug, hat, cell phone case, pillowcase, whatever you want, and become a channel member today. It really helps support this channel and get out more content. Remember, guys, freedom is dangerous. It's scary, it's unpredictable, but the thing more dangerous, scary, and unpredictable is not having freedom. The price of freedom is now and will always be eternal vigilance. And indifference to this notion is the means by which the people have and will secure their own oppression. Stop being indifferent. I'll see you guys in the next video.